I made a video the other day looking at alternative apps to Filmic Pro because, as I'm sure you know, Filmic Pro is going to a subscription model now. And in that video, I covered a lot of the apps that I've used before and liked, but I obviously didn't cover every app out there. And since then, a recurring question and comment I keep getting is, what do I think about the Cinema P3 camera app? Well, I didn't know it existed until just the other day, and so I downloaded it, been trying it out, and so that's what we're going to look at today. All right, this is not going to be a full tutorial. This is a brief overview of the Cinema P3 app. This is the free version, so we'll look at what's in the free version and then what's in the paid version. The free version, I have to say, has quite a bit of functionality. Pretty clean screen. One thing I like is that across the top here, you instantly can see what you're shooting. 4K 24, P3 color. I'll get into that in a minute. AFC means you're using autofocus continuous. White balance is on daylight preset. You got your ISO and your shutter speed, and then your battery indicator. Then you got your normal settings buttons around the edges. Over here, you can choose your camera. This does shoot photos, by the way. And then you got your creative section. Creative is going into using LUTs and different presets that they've created. This is part of the paid version though. Got to upgrade to do that. Speaking of that, I'll show that real quick. So you can get a 7-day free trial if you don't want to use the free one and you want to try the pro one. And then after that, it's $7, and $7 unlocks it forever, which pretty good price. And it lists the pro tools that you get with that purchase. Right here is nice. You can instantly see what you're shooting. And so right now it's set up in 4K 24 HLG. It's good that you can know what you're shooting across the top and then change it right here. You've got Rec 709, P3, and HLG. This down here, the 10-bit 709 is part of the Pro. Anytime you see these little yellow Pro icons, obviously that means you've got to pay to get those upgrades. Over here on the right, I mentioned white balance, and so you've got your white balance controls and you can manually adjust it right here, or you can set it with a preset, which I'll show in a second. You also have tint controls here, which I like. I probably wouldn't do that too often, but it is a nice feature to have there. There's two different tools menus. There's one here at the top, and then there's one on the right over here. So the one on the right that I just clicked on, these are the settings that affect the mode you're in. In other words, if you're in video mode, it'll affect that. If you're in photo mode, it would affect that. And so in video, you can come down here and choose the different settings you want. Or up here at the top is global. This affects everything in the app. Right here, you've got a lens picker, or camera picker, however you want to look at it. You got 0.5, ultra wide angle. You got a 3x. This is an iPhone 14 Pro. And then you got the standard lens. One thing they haven't added to this at the time of this recording is the 2x lens. The 14 Pro has the 48mm. I assume that's coming. You've got a record button. It does say record on there, which I find is unnecessary. I don't know, that's just a minor little nitpicky thing, but I think you could know that that's the record button without having that on there. You've got this play icon button here in the bottom. When you click that, it brings up the last shot you just did, and that way you can preview it. It doesn't, at least to my knowledge, bring up the library though. I actually wish you could get to the library from here. To get to the library, you actually have to go into the settings, click that, and then you've got your library. Library is nice though, because it tells you, like right here, you've got P3 color, you have all the different details, and you can turn the details off if you want. I kind of like having them on so I know what the file was shot in. But then at a quick glance, this has Dolby Vision, and then this has 709. I shot different clips in different profiles. I do like that you can quickly see when you come to the library. And it does have a library, which I like, and you can record to the library or to the Photos app. I prefer going to the library, and that's a big plus in my opinion. Back over here to the menu though, I was starting to show earlier, you got your white balance. One thing that's cool though is you can do auto white balance continuous, or you can do auto white balance where you actually hit and you choose your white balance and it does it for you. Now, that didn't really work, but let me pull out a card here. What you would normally do is put something white in front of the camera, or a gray card, and then you do it. And now it's got that setting, which is really cool, and that will stay. You can go back into the tools And that way you can choose your white balance. Right now it's set on the one I just did, a custom setting, but you do have your various presets, daylight, interior tungsten, or cloudy. And I think that's shade. Or you can do auto white balance, which I don't really recommend auto white balance unless you want to do auto white balance and then you can lock it. So in other words, it's auto white balance until you do white balance lock. So it white balances automatically until you roll. Very similar to how Filmic Pro has it. A couple other things I'll show in the menu is you have different ways to set your focus up. I think the autofocus continuous is the way to go. It also has regular autofocus and it has face detection, which is pretty cool. Autofocus with the C, autofocus continuous, lets you focus and then lock it anytime you want. If you do regular autofocus, what it does is, let me just show that real quick. So you can move it around and select something in focus, but whenever you release it, it locks. That could be handy, especially if you're doing something that's locked down. But if you're moving the camera around at all and you're kind of fishing for focus, that really doesn't work well, in my opinion. And so I like autofocus continuous. And then of course you can also go in and manually focus too. One other thing I wanted to show is with the exposure mode, you can do center, spot, or manual. If you do center, now the reticle's gone. And so whenever you aim the camera, it'll focus for you, but you don't have control over it. But when you're just regularly shooting, I like spot or manual. And then you do have a zoom control as well. So again, I'm comparing this stuff to Filmic Pro. And so these features are similar to Filmic Pro, just implemented in a different way. And one little interesting thing this app has is it has this P3 button. And so what that means is the color that it's highlighting is outside the norm of what you would record in Rec 709. That means that would be better recorded in P3 color. P3 color, what I think of it typically is a wide gamut. It's an HDR color profile. I think of it in displays mainly, like DCI P3 is the way movies are displayed, many of them anyway. But the nice thing is with this app, and this is a cool feature, you can select, as I showed earlier, you can select to shoot in P3, and P3 color, according to the app makers, and I've heard this, although I haven't done a lot with P3, truth be told, is shooting in SDR, not HDR, you can get about 25% or so more color information in your image. And that's in 8-bit. So as you can see, you get quite a bit here with the free version of the app. Everything I've been going over right now is part of the free version of the app. But if you want to pay, that's where you can really get additional pro tools. You get scopes if you pay, you get the different analytics, and importantly, and this is almost worth the price in of itself, is you get manual audio control. As it is right now, in the free version, you only get automatic audio input, and I don't think you even get meters. With the pro version, you get meters. Audio and sound are 50% or more sometimes of a production. Good audio is vital. So that alone is really worth the upgrade to me. However, as a basic app goes, this is more than basic. This app really includes a lot for a free price. But now we'll check out the paid version. But before we get to that, a quick word from our sponsor, me. If you're just getting into mobile filmmaking or need a refresher, be sure to check out one of my courses. And don't forget, I also offer LUT Packs for shooting log with your iPhone, or even now, cinematic mode. For more information, be sure to check the links in the description. Thank you, Blake, for sponsoring this video. All right, so now I have the pro version activated. I paid the $7 and you can instantly see the main thing you get are the different analytics, the ways to measure and manage your different settings, which is super important if you want to do more professional content. The very first thing, and I mentioned the audio meters, they're right here on the left, and you've got your scopes right here, and you can click there and it'll switch to different varieties like RGB parade, different histograms, vector scope stuff. And that affects this button right down here. I did have this on P3, but now you can hold it down and you've got all the different analytics. And so you can see full screen versions of what I just did there, which is pretty cool, I gotta say. Oh, and then you can do zebras. And you can still do the P3 aspect if you want. And you got false color as well. And you can set which one you want to have displayed all the time in the actual settings menu. So right now I've got false color set up. You can put that on whatever you want. Either way, you can, again, hold that down and display and choose the one you want to do. Now you also have focus peaking, and I've got a loop set up there where you can really see what you're doing. And you saw the the gimbal there go into focus peaking mode, which focus peaking is great. Although if you watch my videos, you know that they're not super accurate. It's contrast based. And so it can be out of focus, especially on a phone, but it's definitely helpful. And so then back into the menu, you've got all your different controls and settings for audio, as I mentioned. That way you can come in and change the microphone if you're using the mic built in, or if you're using an external mic, because you can do audio monitoring. You got a time code track you can do. One thing that wasn't available in the free version is now you can set your data rate, your bit rate. So it's right here. You can do auto, or you can come in here and choose the different levels, I guess. 18 would be the highest, and auto is just that. Now, I typically would always record the highest bit rate I can, because that way you'll get the best results for color grading and post-production. And also in my experience, that helps reduce noise. But again, it'll just depend on what you're shooting. And then you can export the LUTs. This is pretty cool. They include LUTs here for the different log profiles and such that they use. These are basically transformer utility LUTs that will take the log footage and make it look normal in editing, like a standard look, a Rec 709 look, if you're editing in SDR, that is. But that is nice that they include that. And speaking of that, now that I did the paid version, you can go into creative and you'll actually have access to these various different profiles. And so they have a C log and a D log. My understanding is the C log and the D log is for shooting log in HDR. So let me go back to, if I was in P3, now that should be a different log. Yeah, it's A log, and it's not nearly as milky looking. But then they also have a bunch of different settings throughout here that you could play with. And I haven't shot with any of these yet. So I don't know if this is a true logarithmic curve, but just based on the app, whoever has developed this, and I don't know the developer of this app, they know what they're talking about, in particular as it relates to HDR and color grading. This is pretty advanced stuff, especially for a phone. But the nice thing is, of course, you don't have to use that. You can just use the basic features, auto if you want, but then you have the options, and I do like that. That's similar to Filmic Pro, but I would say, at least with my initial impressions of this app, these guys take it even a step further. And one little thing I mentioned earlier about the record button, that I don't really like it saying rec on there, but with the Pro version, you do get a cool feature. When you hit record, you get the red box around that. And I do like that. Reminiscent of my Sony mirrorless cameras. Beastcam does that as well. Just a nice way to look down and know you're recording. Little touches like that do make a difference to me. So this video went a little more in depth than I had planned on, but that is a general overview of using the free app, which by the way, you get a lot, and the paid version of this app. I haven't used this app much yet, but so far, I'm thinking this is a really good alternative to Filmic Pro if you don't want to do the subscription. I get a lot of people asking what I'm switching to, and I'm going to keep Filmic Pro for the time being. I've mentioned that if you follow my channel, but there are some great options out there. And now this Cinema P3 camera app has really climbed to maybe the top of the list. I would say for me, it's Beastcam, now this one, and probably Movie Pro. I know there's other apps out there, but for what I do in the filmmaking realm, and I want to have a lot of control over my app and my final product, these kind of apps are the way to go, and they really do compete nicely with Filmic Pro. And of course, this is $7 a one-time payment. But what do you think? Have you tried the P3 camera app? If you haven't, I would suggest downloading it, since you do get a free version. And if you like it, $7, man. That's what a Mocha Grande at Starbucks. So go ahead and pick it up and see what you think.